Imagine you're a Roman legionary. You've been marching for weeks. Your sandals have worn through. Your shoulders are raw from carrying 60 pounds of gear under the Mediterranean sun. Your feet are blistered. Your throat is parched. And now you're standing in formation, watching an enemy horde screaming toward you with murder in their eyes. Your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it in your throat. The man next to you is shaking. The sound of enemy war cries fills your ears. Every instinct in your body is telling you to run, but you don't. Because what Rome will do to you if you run is far worse than anything that enemy could ever do. You see, the Roman military didn't build the greatest empire in history by being nice. They built it by being absolutely terrifying to their own men. And what they did to soldiers who broke ranks, who showed cowardice, who valued their own skin over the glory of Rome. It wasn't just brutal. It was designed to haunt you, to make death on the battlefield feel like a mercy. So let's talk about what really happened when a Roman soldier ran from battle. The word you need to know is decimation. And before you think that just means to destroy, like we use it today, let me tell you what it actually meant. Because the Romans didn't soften their language. Decimation comes from the Latin decimatio, meaning the removal of a tenth. 1 in 10 men killed by their own brothers. Here's how it worked. Let's say your cohort of 500 soldiers broke and ran. Maybe the enemy was too fierce. Maybe the line collapsed. Maybe pure animal terror took over and you fled with everyone else. The battle ends. You survive. You think you got away with it. You didn't. Your commander assembles the entire cohort. A tribune stands before you and rips into your cowardice in front of the whole army. Thousands of soldiers watching, your shame public, your disgrace complete. But that's just the beginning. Then the tribune divides you into groups of 10. You're standing there with 9 other men. Men you trained with, men you've bled with, men you called brothers. And now you draw lots, straws, stones, whatever they had. 1 in 10 draws the short one. If it's you, you're dead. Not by some clean sword stroke, not by the executioner's axe. Your 9 brothers are going to beat you to death with clubs. They called it fastuarium, the punishment of the cudgel. And it was deliberately slow. The tribune touches you with a stick, just a tap. That's the signal. And then every man in your group picks up a wooden club, 3 or 4 feet long, hardened by fire, and they start swinging. The accounts say they avoided the head on purpose. They didn't want you dying too fast. They wanted you to feel every blow. They wanted you to know what happens to cowards. Your arms break first as you try to shield yourself, then your ribs, then they cave in your chest, and the whole time you're looking into the eyes of men who shared your tent. Men who passed you bread yesterday, men who are killing you because Rome demands it. Most men died right there in the camp. But here's the sick part. If somehow you managed to crawl away, if you somehow survived that beating and escaped, you still couldn't go home. No family member would dare take you in. No village would shelter you. You were a walking dead man, rejected by Rome and everything Roman. And that's if you drew the short straw. Now here's where it gets even darker. If you were one of the 9 who survived, if you weren't selected for execution, you still weren't forgiven. The survivors had to eat barley instead of wheat. Now that might not sound like much, but to a Roman soldier, this was devastating. Barley was horse food, animal feed. You were being told that you weren't even human anymore. You were livestock. And everyone in that camp knew it every time they saw you choking down that coarse grain that your stomach could barely digest. But wait, there's more. You were kicked out of the fortified camp. You had to pitch your tent outside the walls, outside the protection, exposed to enemy raids and the elements. Every night you lay there knowing that if the enemy came, you'd be the first to die, and no one would come to save you. This went on for days, sometimes weeks, until you redeemed yourself in combat, until you proved with blood that you weren't the coward Rome had labeled you. The psychological torture was the point. The Romans understood something that modern people forget. Shame can be worse than death, and they weaponized it. If you're finding this video interesting, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel bring you more content like this. And if you're not subscribed yet, join the Legion of Rome. We've got a lot more brutal history coming your way. Now let me tell you about the most famous decimation in Roman history, the one that made generals think twice before even threatening it. It was 72 BC. Rome was being humiliated by something they considered unthinkable, a slave revolt. Spartacus and his army of gladiators and runaway slaves had been crushing Roman forces for 2 years. Consuls had fallen, legions had been routed. The most powerful military on earth was being beaten by men who weren't even considered human under Roman law. The Senate was desperate. They gave command to Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest and most ruthless men in Rome. Crassus had a problem. His soldiers were more afraid of Spartacus than they were of him, and that was unacceptable. Think about what that means. Roman legionaries, trained killers, conquerors of nations were running from slaves, former gladiators and field workers, men Rome didn't even consider fully human, and the legions were fleeing in terror. So when a unit of his men fled from battle against the slave army, Crassus made a decision that would echo through history. He ordered decimation. Some accounts say 50 men died. Some say it was closer to 4,000. We'll probably never know the exact number. What we do know is that his soldiers got the message. After the decimation, Crassus's legions fought like men possessed. They stopped running. They stopped breaking, because they understood now the enemy in front of them might kill them, but Rome behind them definitely would. Spartacus was eventually cornered and killed. 6,000 of his followers were crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies left to rot as a warning. But the real lesson wasn't for the slaves, it was for Rome's own soldiers. Fear your commanders more than you fear the enemy. Here's the thing that'll keep you up at night. Decimation wasn't just random death, it was engineered injustice. The lot didn't care if you were brave. It didn't care if you held the line longer than anyone else before the rout. It didn't care if you were the best soldier in your cohort. You could be the most decorated veteran in the unit, and if you drew that short straw, your brothers were still going to cave in your skull with wooden clubs. That was the genius of it. The randomness made it worse, because every soldier who survived knew it could have been him, knew that luck, not merit, had kept him alive, knew that if this ever happened again, the odds might not be in his favor. The guilt must have been crushing. You just watched your friend die. You might have been the one to strike the killing blow, and you have to live with that. You have to march beside an empty space where your brother used to stand. You have to eat your barley rations knowing his blood is on your hands. It created a culture where men would rather die fighting than risk the lottery of decimation. Roman soldiers would throw themselves into hopeless last stands rather than retreat. They'd run toward the enemy rather than show their backs. Because at least in combat, death was honorable, and that's exactly what Rome wanted. Julius Caesar, the greatest military mind Rome ever produced, understood the power of decimation without even having to use it. During the Civil War, his 9th Legion showed signs of mutiny. These were hardened veterans, men who had conquered Gaul with him, men who feared nothing. Caesar assembled them and calmly announced he would consider decimation. That was it, just the threat. The entire legion fell to their knees, begging for mercy. Officers threw themselves at his feet. These weren't cowards. These were the most experienced soldiers in the Roman world, and the mere suggestion of decimation broke them. Caesar never had to follow through. The threat was enough. That's power. Mark Antony wasn't so merciful. After his legions showed cowardice against the Parthians around 35 BC, he ordered immediate decimation. Every 10th man clubbed to death by his companions. The survivors forced to eat barley and sleep outside the walls. The message rippled through every Roman army in the east. There is no excuse for running. There is no circumstance that justifies cowardice. You hold that line or you die. And dying in battle is a kindness compared to what we'll do if you don't. Even during the Empire, Commanders used decimation. Emperor Augustus threatened it. Galba actually carried it out. As late as the 3rd century AD, soldiers could still be selected by lot and beaten to death for the crime of cowardice. For over 500 years, Roman soldiers lived under this shadow. So the next time you read about the Roman legions conquering the known world, remember what made that possible. It wasn't just superior tactics. It wasn't just better equipment. It wasn't just training. It was terror. The Roman soldier faced enemies that wanted to kill him, and behind him stood an empire that would make him kill his own brother if he showed weakness. He lived knowing that cowardice meant a death worse than any enemy could deliver. A death without honor. A death at the hands of his own comrades. That's why they didn't run. That's why they held those lines in impossible situations. That's why Rome conquered the world. Because what Rome did to soldiers who ran from battle was so horrific, so psychologically devastating, that death in combat seemed like a gift. If you made it this far, you're a true soldier of this channel. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. We've got plenty more stories from the brutal world of Roman military life coming your way. Until next time, hold the line.